Hello, and welcome to LDEI Live Online. I'm your host, Sheila Cry, and today we are honored to present a live conversation between Dame Catherine Ker and her colleague, Michele Evans. Catherine is Senior Director of Global Lifestyle Food and Beverage for Hilton International, a leading hospitality organization. We look forward to hear Michele's and Catherine's insights on leadership and their work and how women mentoring women can pave the way for advancement in the workplace. A member of the Washington, D.C. regional chapter of Les Dames d'Escoffier and an active participant in the mentoring committee, Catherine has been deeply engaged in exploring how mentoring can take shape at the chapter level, whether one-on-one or in groups, formal or informal, and within or beyond the chapter. She was especially interested in how a mentor can connect a mentee with the right people and help her achieve the milestones needed to progress from operations to management leadership. This program is the result of that vision. Following approximately 45 minutes of conversation, Michele and Catherine will take your questions. At that time, please turn on your camera, unmute yourself, and raise your virtual hand to ask your question directly. And now I'm pleased to turn the program over to Dame Catherine Ker to introduce Michele Evans.
Thanks so much, Sheila, and good afternoon to those who it's afternoon, and good morning to those who are calling in from other places. As Sheila mentioned, my name is Catherine Ker, and I'm the Senior Director of Lifestyle Food and Beverage globally for Hilton, hopefully a hotel company that many of you are familiar with. And today I'm joined with my fearless leader and favorite person at Hilton, Michele Evans. She is the Senior Vice President of Global Lifestyle Food and Beverage, but comes from a world so far beyond the hotel space. And I'll allow her in a moment to just say hello and give a little bit of her background. But today, our hope is to facilitate a conversation wherein I will ask Michele some questions related to her background and her experience, and we can speak a little bit about leadership and professional development and the overall landscape for women in hospitality, food, beverage, culinary, and so on. And then, as Sheila mentioned, we'll leave some time at the end for some questions. But of course, we encourage everyone to participate in those last few minutes we have, and hopefully today we'll have a chance to provide each of you a little bit of insight into our world and our background. So with that, I'll hand it over to Michele to give a little bit of an introduction of herself, and then I'll begin with the questions.
Amazing. Well, first, Catherine, thank you for wanting me to be your sidekick today. That's super fun. And to Les Dames d'Escoffier, so excited to be here. I actually didn't quite realize that this amazing group existed. And I look forward to becoming a member as soon as we're off the call, Sheila. And I really am really grateful to be here because I think out of anything I could be putting forth effort towards in my day, it's if I have to speak in front of a group, I'd rather have it be a group of like super powerful people who happen to be, women in the business. And business could be anything from procurement to, how to run a restaurant, to how to sell olive oil or to produce it. So really excited to be here. My name's Michele, and I've been in the business for about 23 years. I spent 15 years with, I'll first back up and say founder-led organizations has been my jam. And it's been something that I like really vibe with and love because it produces some of the best results in the field. And when I think about my professional life of 23 years, it's been comprised of a couple companies, Steven Star Restaurants, for 15 of those years. And I kind of grew up in that organization. So restaurants, independent restaurants, high level, macro, $23 million at top line to 5 million boutique. to Michelin. And I left Stephen, the last 5 years I was with him was his vice president of operations, running New York, DC, and Miami. And we built so many brands without that, within that org, which allowed me to really understand how you can be within a large portfolio and be extremely diverse in what you're offering from a product perspective. From there, I pivoted away from independent restaurants, stayed in the restaurant space in bespoke creative restaurants with Auberge Resorts Collection. So that is a luxury hospitality brand that is really only in the Americas, kind of moving towards Europe at this point in their space. I was there for just under 2 years, and that was during COVID when I left, not due to the restaurant world collapsing, but also just needing a break and having a moment to step away and really think about my life and where I wanted to go. And after only a short time at Auberge, I joined a private equity firm, and that was built on extreme hospitality brands. And I was there for 2 years. We sort of positioned one of our brands to grow and be sold. And then the introduction with Hilton happened. So founder-led, Hilton, I'm the senior vice president, global lifestyle, food and beverage. And Hilton's the largest org I've ever been part of, and it's kind of ultimately been the scariest because of its size in and of itself. It's just been interesting to think about navigating such a large organization. And I've been here about 17 months, paving the way towards this tiny little 6-person org in food and beverage in a sea of a publicly traded org. And, it's an extraordinary feat to pivot out of and away from sort of the independent mindset. I would be silly not to talk about like this really weird thing I did between getting my master's degree and moving into restaurants. There was a really interesting gentleman who found me at 23 and said, "Come and be the general manager of my tiny restaurant." And naturally, I said, "No, thank you," because I didn't grow up in restaurants in the traditional characteristics of serving tables and bussing tables and getting there in the traditional way that so many people do. Um, he sort of found me at a coffee shop after my master's degree and said, "I think you'd be a really good general manager for me." And I thought he was crazy and out of his mind, but I didn't have a job and didn't know what I wanted to do next. So I thought this could be really fun for a few years. And in college, I really come from a humble background and needed to put myself through school. So I had 3 roles. I saved a lot of money and decided to spend all of it over the next 20 months taking this GM role. And I really focused on boutique lifestyle hotels in Paris, London, and New York, and only Michelin-driven restaurants. And I dined and traveled every weekend to invest in my experience understanding, because I thought if I could be a guest at the level of Michelin, then I could probably perform at average as a general manager of a tiny restaurant in a small town in New Jersey. So I really built a culture where the competitive table was of high interest to me because I wanted to understand where top tables were innovating forward. And that was super, super fun. And it became an invaluable moment and background and experience level for me when moving through star restaurants for 15 years, because I could sit at a table and really describe experience from ambiance to what product landed on a plate to a beverage experience in a really different format than any of my colleagues. So anyway, that's a little bit about me. And I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, thanks so much, Michelle. For those who appreciate prioritization, I think the time spent at that juncture dining around was probably one of the most eye-opening and educational feats that you could potentially do. So, okay, well, first things first. We're reflecting on leadership journey. A lot of the women here have careers that are not so unlike yours, and many of us probably didn't plan to land where we are in the food and hospitality space. It's one of those things that kind of creeps up on you and the bug bites you, and next thing you know, you blink and 10 years have gone by in the independent restaurant space. But specifically related to that, what have you learned from independent restaurant culture that continues to inform how you lead now at Hilton at a global scale?
It's a great question. Founder-led mentality. Small business owners have to watch every dollar in and every dollar out. And you realize in the restaurant space, after you pay rent, it becomes a pennies and nickels game. And in so many businesses, as you're growing, it's a pennies and nickels game. So you're trying to find, with all of the incoming battles that the world offers, costs rising, rent structures rising, developers owning everything, how do you make money for yourself or for someone else? And I think in the independent space, you really figure out how to make money in the most scrappy ways, and a lot of which is sort of, it's led with speed. And in a lot of the larger organizations, you find how much fat actually lives in them because there's so much time that they're wasting watching pennies and nickels sort of float away. So I think scrappy, how to make a dollar stretch, balancing and prioritizing where to spend and what to spend it on actually matters the most. And the second thing is surrounding yourself with people who are better than you at things. And that's really critical. And I think a lot of people say that in leadership forums, but I really mean it. Like, there's no way to, I'll talk about the whole human a little bit later, because when I think about the whole human that would satisfy the work needed, the whole human is something that we all strive to be. And I just think that I have extraordinary gaps. And when I think about and extraordinary interests and extraordinary things I hate doing within the roles that I've taken. So when I think about the people who need to surround me, I think about building a whole human structure to satisfy the work. And I think a lot of people live in a space where they are too egoic and think that they can do it all. And I definitely can't. So when I think about Catherine was actually the first person on my team at Hilton. And I thought about some of the gaps that I have and some of the strengths that Catherine has. And it was an obvious yes when we talked about Catherine joining the team. She was on another person's team and quite successful in it. And Catherine, when I think about you joining me, I think we just live in harmony together. So so thank you for being who you are. When I think about the other things that I learned through the independent restaurant lens is experience almost matters more than everything we worry about. Like, I remember like starting out and worrying about like what I looked like, or like what I was wearing, or even like how I'd present in the first Hilton huge crowd of 300, what I was going to say. And I overthought the process when work sings for itself, talent presents itself if you just know your craft. And I think I lost that coming into a large org for a second, when the reality is I could throw down in any large conversation with a chef or a CEO founder in the restaurant space. I can live, head to head with those team members. Coming into a large org, I was like, what am I doing? And then I found myself again, I think at month 6 after being at Hilton, which has been fun. And then I think the last thing is the reason why I love hospitality and the space we're all in is I love how equalizing it is. It's so equalizing at the end of the day. I mean, you can be a busser and figure out how to be a GM if you just have the talent and wherewithal, and if you put forth the effort. And I think about inclusivity is sort of a non-negotiable in our space. And when I think about the areas that really landed some influence, some learnings for me. And it all came from independent restaurants listening to what people of all economic levels and pay scales and time in the industry had to say. So Founder mentality made me scrappy, dollar in, dollar out, pennies and nickels game. It's really important to know that the guests that we have, or the people that are the consumers, are spending their money somewhere and they could spend it very easily elsewhere. So surrounding yourself with people who are far better than you at all the things, or at least the things you don't want to be doing. Experience is a journey, and then inclusivity. They're the things that I've taken away, and they matter.
Yeah, it's great. And one thing that I notice particularly about you, Michele, is that you look for the maybe not so obvious composition when building a team and surrounding yourself. I think what you mentioned about ego is really important. I think particularly as a woman in the workforce, we have this um, natural inclination to want to be everything at all times. And the reality is that the real women who succeed are the ones that can recognize that you do need help. And sometimes that help comes in the form of someone more junior. Sometimes that comes in the form of a peer, a colleague, someone inside the company, someone outside the company. But the composition of those you surround yourself with is what really paves the way for the path forward. You may have everything in your tool belt to do it, but you do need those allies along the way, which sort of brings me to my next question of, in your experience and your time in the business, who were those people? Who were the peers, the colleagues, the mentors who champion your growth and your voice, and how did they do that?
I had the weirdest peers. I'm gonna just put that out there. My peers, when I finally got to the table with Steven Starr, like, I had the weirdest peer. I mean, everybody was older and everybody was male. It was super weird, like, and I say it that way because I mean, men have always been great allies in star restaurants, but I wasn't hanging out with people my age, my look, my level of wisdom and my interest level, people who would rather sit at home, and or go home to families, all of which I sort of didn't have at the time, and when I think about my peers, their experience as men, and at the time 30 plus years older than me, we had very different experience in our space. So the cool thing about being with Steven, who was much older and a different way of life, he was a concert promoter very early on, and then he got into restaurants, but probably for like different reasons than I did. He really demanded that my voice be present at the table. Like, I think if he yelled at me for anything or was intense with me about anything, it was to be louder with my voice and my opinion. And that was actually really hard to do with my peers, because all of his peers were all very strange people for me. And then I became used to my voice being louder and louder, and I was able to grow up in that space with extreme demand. And then I think about direct voice peers, people I hired, people who were colleagues, and they were always extraordinary champions and or truth seekers. They're the people who could tell you that you weren't doing a good job, or they were people who were really interested in keeping it real. And I've needed that along the way. And then there are people who work directly for me. And that's a two-way dialogue in every way. And I think, man, hearing feedback, I called it the firing squad in a lot of orgs, where I would take my team and say, what am I doing wrong this week? What am I doing wrong? And it was a free space for people to tell me feedback about where I had blind spots, and we all do, and I still do. And I think about ways to improve, and the things that were really itchy and made me uncomfortable were the best things that I've ever heard. And then I think lastly, the competitor. I really love the competitor. And without competition, we don't exist. So I called another global F&B person from a competing restaurant and hotel company recently. And I said, man, you're so good. What are you doing? Because I don't know what I'm doing in this particular question. And I just think being good and excellent should not be a secret, especially amongst female leaders. So I sort of want to tell everybody my secrets because it's more efficient for everybody else to get to the end result. And I sort of want to know everybody's secrets as well. And I feel like the competition is one that is actually safe. It's safe space.
Yeah,
And then I have a weird amount of professional female friends, and then just professional weirdos out there who are doing things that, man, like they influence my thought process. You know, people who integrate having 3 kids, they're fit and they're running a company. I want that secret because that's pretty fabulous. So I want to know how to integrate my lifestyle and my success with my professional focus as well. I think that's any tricks of the trade there. I'm happy to learn it.
for sure. I think one phrase I've heard you mention more than once is "don't hide your paper." And I think particularly as you get into bigger companies, um, you know, it happens in small companies too. You know, personally, when you're in a restaurant group and everyone's really competitive, I'm sure this happened in Star. This certainly happened in some of the restaurant groups I work with. The GMs are competitive with one another. The chefs are competitive with one another, and while that's good and it sort of drives innovation and pushes performance, I think to a certain degree, whether it's at a Hilton or at a Star restaurant group, hiding your paper is what really holds back that actual progression. And I appreciate that you walk the walk and talk the talk with that, because um, not all leaders really subscribe to that. They want their team to be the best. They want to be the highest performer. They want to bring the most revenue in. They want to win the most awards. But the reality is, like, if we're all marching to the same finish line, and in this particular case, an example you give, calling a competitor of another global company that is probably also trying to innovate and beat us at what we're doing as competitors, that person not hiding their paper.
Oh no, is Catherine stuck? Does everybody think Catherine's stuck, or is it just me? Okay. I could probably, I don't know what she's thinking, but, speaking on behalf of that, hiding, our paper, it's a funny thing. I just think sharing is caring, right? Like if I have the answer and it could save you time, I'd rather just give it to you. And in calling this competitor, at my neighboring place, she was happy to give me the answer. She's like, this is how I'm doing it. And I'm grateful to anybody who would share their answers.
I'm so sorry.
No
Despite
worries.
working at a big office with great Wi-Fi, I got kicked out there for a second, but thanks for holding that
Yes.
down, Michelle. So the next sort of question we have here that is on my mind is leadership. And this is probably a big reason why I asked you to join me on this today, and particularly being a woman leader. I'd love to hear sort of what your challenges have been, and what you faced early in your career relative to leadership, and how you navigated those.
Safe space, right? I mean, it's a safe space. I think identity is a funny thing. Identity is something ridiculous that we even have to worry about. But if I think about my early 20s, right, and then I think about my 30s, and I think about my 40s, it's evolved. And in my 20s, in an effort to be amongst very senior male leaders and colleagues and peers, my weird peers, and then a bunch of chefs in the industry, I think what I did in my 20s was I would hide any sort of, I became asexual in order to be taken seriously. I sort of like allowed my sexuality to take a back seat, my gender expression to take a back seat in an effort to be amongst and to be taken seriously amongst a sea of really strong male leaders. Like I wore like nondescript black suits every single day. I had 13 black suits. And I wore them every single day, for 15 years in Star. And it wasn't because of Star. I did it in my next role as well. And it became this thing where I wanted to be taken so seriously for the work and my knowledge that I refused to allow my gender to be a thing. And I think in 2025, it's a non-negotiable to allow our sexuality and gender expression to be a thing. I would mainstream through the lens of work, and I would, I would, I felt like the only way I could succeed and gain momentum is if I was work, work, work. And that was really weird. And let alone if you're part of a queer family or if you have like a different way or different expression in life, like I, I think it's hard. It's hard to, it depends on your org, right? Like it depends on your org as in if you're not comfortable within your org, maybe you're in the wrong organization. Maybe you're in a space where like being a female leader isn't as welcome as we think. As soon as we start to feel like we go, as soon as I start to think about a black suit in my life now, I start to shrink away from the org. I'm like, I don't want to be in a black suit, nondescript, without like my style to show through. And whatever that style is, should not really be a thing. So I think it's affected me because I felt like the work what needed to be the prowess of everything. I naturally have imposter syndrome. I'm a Korean American. Like I've always looked younger than my peers and like I'm kind of 103 pounds. Like, I mean, so I have to physically stand up to people who are bigger, all gender orientations. And I think I've questioned myself in that, just like most people do. Yeah, I practice longer and I think about the questions. I have more intention around the outcome than I think a lot of other people, our male counterparts in particular. And it's made me kind of super strong, but I'm hoping to pave ways and to be a change agent for other people now. So it's not so hard for other people. Like they don't have to think twice about like how they identify to be in an organization. And I think the composition at this point, table stakes for any great company is to not have any of those things matter, gender exclusive. And I think I'm happy to continue to be a change agent to control a narrative by building teams. A way in which I think I controlled that was to build teams. And the way I built them was thinking about the whole composition of the work, but also thinking about very intentionally going after people of minority groups to be on the team. I think that was really super, super important, and female leaders too. I think we needed balance in all the teams that I was creating for other organizations. And I think when I think about leadership and leading the teams, all gender expressions and gender identities, it's really assessing where they're at. If I make this analogous to a marathon and I want to get to, I want my team at a 7-minute pace, and I'm going to naturally choose based on how much I have to spend and how much salary I can afford. I'm going to choose a 10-minute miler. I'm going to choose somebody who's newer to the workforce, who does not run at the speed that my senior leaders will. And all I can do is invest the time to figure out how that 10-minute miler, a pace runner in a marathon, how I can get them to an 8-minute mile. And I have to think about where and how fast they could potentially run on my team before offering a different opportunity to them or inspiring them towards a different opportunity where they might be stronger. So leadership in general, being female, has only allowed me to be a stronger woman, which I think is super fun. And it has forced me to think about team structure and building very differently. And the imposter syndrome thing, which I think we all feel sometimes, is like not worth the time, but sometimes it makes us better because we become better at the craft.
For sure. And I do think there's something to be said about self-reflection. I think imposter syndrome has this very negative connotation because in theory it's not a fun place to be. But I do think, you know, selecting a team and building a team based upon, that outcome and knowing that you can only, you have to sort of pave the way for the next generation of the workforce. So we need to be stewards of who those people are. They're not going to be the 7-minute milers, to metaphorically put it as you have. But this is great. I think, your leadership journey has been something that I think speaks to where the future is going. And but one thing that you haven't really spoken about, which I think is a huge part of your leadership style, is how you balance sort of creativity and culture with commercial success. And there's a lot of women on the phone who are small business owners. There's a lot of women on the phone who are doing more than one thing, cross-cutting industries. And I'd love to just hear a little bit about like how you do balance those things, the creativity, the culture, and, commercial success, which is obviously how we pay the bills.
Um, it's a great question, and I guess maybe I want to first pause and make sure everybody's having a good time. Like, I mean, I see smiles. I just want to make sure everybody's in a good place. Okay, good. All right, thank you. Thank you for the hearts
Oh,
and
I
the
love the emojis.
floating emojis. All right, so creativity and commercial success. Without commercial success, you have no room to be creative. I mean, there's just a reality, right? Like, we have to think about, they're directly linked in every move we make, every decision we make. So without commercial success, there's no room. I think about a lot of our chefs who really love the weirdest thing on the menu, but the percentage of people that are going to buy it, it's so small. And when I think about, that movie, The Menu, and I think about the cheeseburger at the end of the film, if you haven't seen it, it's hilarious. But the reason why burgers and steaks and all these things become, or even like popcorn shrimp and these things that like really at this point are table stakes on a lot of menus, they have they're a commercial driver. So knowing your commercial drivers are critical to have the thing that you might sell fewer of. And to be inclusive, we have to think about our consumer, and we have to take a democratic approach to our consumer. So if we know that we have 100 consumers and 80% of them are going to be not super niche and they're not necessarily going to know what's happening in that tiny space, then man, we need to sell a portion of the menu to get our drivers at the top so we're making money. We make money not just because we want to be wealthy at the end of the day, right? That's a bonus. We make money because we have to care for the people we employ. Like COVID, right? We had to unemploy too many people in our world. I don't ever want to have to do that again. I don't even like to terminate people, right? Like, so the responsibility of leadership is to make sure commercial performance is at the forefront of our thought process all the time, so that the dishwashers have a place to be in our kitchens. Otherwise, you're asking the line cook to do something they don't want to do, right? So I think, and when you think about the most entry level position in your business, man, like, I care about them more than myself. Like, if I think about why I care about putting on the drivers at the top, the drivers at the top of the menu, just speaking about food and beverage for a second, need to yield the most amount of money. Like, you want to flow as much to the bottom. So those top 3 commercial drivers, I hope, are making as much money as possible, as commercially viable. And then when you get to art form, right? Like, when you want to put a little ego mix in, man, like, allow that to be the thing. Don't allow the namesake restaurant to be your first thing. Allow it to be your third or fourth or fifth thing. Make sure that you can have commercial success in a lot of different ways to support that thing that's going to be hyper creative for you. Allow that project to live in a space once you can afford a loss. And I think that's really critical. And I have always made money for other businesses, other people. And and in Hilton, we have thousands and hundreds of owners that own hotels. I'm here to help them make money. And I can't be vain to say, Hilton believes this, and put something in the ground that tertiary markets aren't ready for. And when I think about the commercial performance for owners around the world, like, I have to be mindful of that. And when you have top line commercial success, it gives you air cover to do all the other things, to pay bills, to pay your people, to hire that extra position that you couldn't, and ultimately to take on that art project. So then it goes back to balancing priorities of where you're going to spend the money that you actually have coming in. So hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah, for sure. I have a funny little anecdote related to this. Many of the women on the phone probably have heard the name Nancy Silverton. I had the fortune and the privilege of getting to know her as she has done some work in our Hilton hotels, and she came down to our Hilton headquarters to cook a lunch a few years back. And naturally, having been on the food and beverage team, I was helping get her in and make sure she had the product she needed for our, which is, I hate to call it a cafeteria, but it's actually a really lovely space on the ground floor of our corporate office. And we had a chance to just chat. And I said, I ate at Chiaspacca, your restaurant in LA. The chicken was life changing. It's a beautiful, like, whole roasted chicken that sits on her sourdough loaf. That was the obsession she had on the Netflix special of her going through 900 types of pizza dough and sourdough to perfect the loaf. And she just said to me, without the butterscotch budino, which is essentially a little pudding, I wouldn't be able to do half the things that I've been able to do. She said, at any time I get invited, this woman has cooked with Julia Childs on TV. This woman has a Netflix special of the first season of Chef's Table. She's a household name, but I would argue that a lot of the food she cooks in her restaurants is extravagant. But when it really boils down to it, the butterscotch budino is what's on the cover of her cookbook. It's the most Googled recipe she has online. And when she gets invited to Good Morning America, it doesn't matter that she's had, worked at 3 Michelin star restaurants or that she is the most popular restaurants in LA. They want to hear about her pudding. And I think that just speaks to what, as you put it, Michelle, like, let the winners win. And if there's some leftovers for that art form, that's when you can explore, and that might come a little bit later, it might come never, but if it allows you to pay your people and to push the business forward, it should be, I guess, always top of mind. Well, that's great. I'd like to, dig a little bit deeper into leadership once more, and this might be more of a philosophical question, but I'd love to just hear, like, how do you think about leadership, point blank? Like, what does that really mean to you, and how do you think about that as you move not only through your professional life, but your life outside of work?
Leadership is a funny thing. I talk about this with my team currently. So Catherine's heard this before, but I have a team of 6 globally for this small division. And it's the smallest team I've actually ever worked with. But we're sort of in this sea of business. We're in the sea of busy, and we're in the sea of Hilton. And I look at us being on a life raft in the middle of a massive ocean, and we'll call the ocean Hilton, and we'll call the life raft lifestyle, food and beverage. And there's right now only 4 of us as we continue to build our team. And we have to lock arms and figure out how to stand on a life raft without tipping over, right? And the storms that come, the emergencies that come, and the ocean that naturally has waves and sort of this undulating force, we have to figure out how to balance. And it is important to me that everybody on my team has that I'm thinking about their whole human self. When I think about where you're at, Catherine, like in life, I think about, okay, what are all the factors that are Catherine in her own ocean? And I think about my other team member, Chris, and like, what are the factors for him? And I think about somebody newer to the workforce and what are the factors for this other person? And I have to care about all the factors. I do. I have to care. I don't have to be part of any drama, but I have to care about what's influencing them. So if I take something as simple as time, age, and space, at some point there are people who want to run really fast towards their careers, and they want to go, and they do not care. They want to go up, and they want to go fast. And I have to show them that horizontal expansion and knowledge is equally as critical as moving vertically through rank and hierarchy. And I also have to consider where somebody may need to run really fast in the next 3 years of their lives because they want to have kids in 3 years, or they want to build a family, whatever that composition looks like. I have to care about that. And when somebody wants to take a step towards something else, I have to encourage that. So leadership is really about people first, how to care about them. And it doesn't mean your whole organization has to be people first. It means that the way you personally lead these teams really cares about the whole human. And the inspiration for everyone needs to be the work. So when I think about the work and man, like, did I inform everybody about what the goals are? And am I championing the goals on a regular basis? Because if anybody on the team is unclear, it's my fault. It's my responsibility to make sure that everybody's clear about the criteria of success and the goals ahead. And without it, like, what is our purpose? Like, what's our entire intention of being here? Why is Hilton inspired this little team to make something better? I have to remind myself that. I also have to remind my team, and I have to give them the criteria for success so they understand the measures. So people first, criteria, success, measuring, and leadership is also about being extremely fearless in addressing what's happening in the world. Like, wherever you stand politically, sometimes when there's an election, it's more traumatizing than other times, and being able to address that with a team. And when in the space where um, abortion rights are being challenged everywhere, and these rights are being challenged, I have addressed my team members on a call to say, like, if you need to talk about something, let's talk about it. Or how are you feeling? Like, I don't feel afraid of that. I'm not afraid of talking about COVID, and at the time in the leadership space, like, talking about how much worry and demand it would require. I mean, if we are not talking about the real issues, I think that we lose trust with our teams at this point in time. So I talk about economic challenges all the time and the threats that threaten our business model, so that people are aware, and when they're thinking about decisions and really considering the decisions I have to make, sometimes harder than others, I want people to know what I'm thinking about. And sometimes that's a little bit of, like, that's 10 minutes on a leadership call to talk about, hey, I'm really worried about these things, and I'm thinking about them, and I'm thinking about the threats of tariffs right now, or I'm thinking about how it's going to, like, look at the supply chain as we consider buying things. All of that to me is like fearless
You
leadership.
make it sound easy. You make it sound easy, Michelle, but I do think, whether you're working in a small business or you're working at a big company, the belt is tightening for everyone right now. In the Financial Times just this morning, it said people are eating in more and more and more. And even though the cost of groceries doing a grocery run is now equivalent to eating a meal out, people are still staying at home. They're having trepidation about the future. They're worried about their ability to make ends meet, and I think that's a huge thing that we talk about in our team. It's a little scary, right? Because our job is to innovate food and beverage in the hospitality space, but if there's a looming question out there of what happens when people don't dine out as much, like, how do we get there? How do we take care of the business? And I think addressing these challenges head on, whether it's the political landscape, the economic landscape, globally, in an individual market, it's things we need to take that we can't take for granted. But I do think that not all leaders really see that as their problem, to put it bluntly. I think if we're a little team of six that looks after thousands of hotel owners globally, you taking the time to address those things is important. But others that others may argue that it's not really, we don't have the time. But I think making the time is what builds that trust. I think it's what shows that you mean what you say, and that we are the whole human, and we're being treated as not just a number on a page when you have to do a performance review at the end of the year, and we all, come to work to make money to survive. But I do think that addressing those challenges, whether it's related to the business, related to the political landscape, related to someone as an individual, is something that every leader should really take into account when they take the job. But I'm looking at time, so we're about 15 minutes to the hour, and I do have a couple questions remaining that we haven't really addressed yet, but I think I would love to give the group an opportunity to, unmute and say their name and where they're from. And if there's a question, happy to field it. And I know, Sheila, you're the expert at moderating these types of things. So feel free to correct me if the format's wrong, but I'd love to open the floor to any questions or thoughts to the group that we have on the phone.
Yes, Catherine, that's the right format. I would just say, if we have several people wanting to ask a question at the same time, if you raise your virtual hand, then we can call on you in order. Just to start out, I have a question about Hilton International. Do you all have at least one restaurant in Las Vegas, right? The Nomad Library, is that right?
We have quite a few
Oh.
restaurants in Vegas.
The library one appealed to me.
Oh, yeah. Um, so Michelle and I look after what we call the lifestyle brand portfolio, which is really exciting because it's the number one emerging segment in the hotel space right now. So I wouldn't say that those outside the industry are super familiar with the term, but think of us as the sort of I like to think of it as like the cousin to the best independent restaurants in the world, like the people that dine at the best restaurants, the coolest restaurants, whether they're edgy or hi-fi or lo-fi. Like those are the types of people that we want to stay in our hotels. So Michelle was brought on board having sort of worked her way into this space. But we are the fastest growing hotel brand portfolio within Hilton. So you probably know some of our brands as Waldorf Astoria. On the top end, we have Hampton Inn on the sort of other end of the spectrum, but we look after a group of brands in the lifestyle space. We don't have any active projects in Vegas just yet, but the Nomad is a really interesting one. And
Oh, okay.
it's a partnership that we have with a leading luxury lifestyle hotel brand, of which Hilton is now expanding their portfolio to include some brands that have been built outside of our four walls that really do it best, and we're trying to take those lessons, and Michelle is leading the strategy on driving how food and beverage manifests in that space. But Vegas, my personal opinion, while not being a place where I would go as a consumer or on a vacation, high design, high demand for innovation in F&B spaces, really great investment, and thankfully on the backs of casino dollars. But so there's, all the big chefs, particularly coming out of COVID, have really gravitated towards the Miamis, the Vegases of the world. So anyways, I digress. I don't know, Michelle, if you have any comments on sort of how our space is a little bit different within the Hilton ecosystem, but for those, if they are curious, would be interested to share.
Well, I'll first speak to the Nomad. So I love the Nomad. The brand is brilliant. I think it was really high design. I think the Nomad Library Bar is really special. The original was in New York City. It was actually the bar that I would go and hang out in. And it sadly turned into the Ned, which is a different hotel type. But Hilton has an association with the Nomad, and we plan to grow that brand. The Nomad right now that's most relevant is in London, and it couldn't be more delightful from a design perspective. And I think the F&B experience in particular has always been strong because it started out in New York with Daniel Hume and Will Guidara. And they've always been known to have a magician and to kind of like think about magic shows differently. And their whole ethos is sort of it lives on magic.
Well, the reason I was asking about Las Vegas is that LDEI will have its annual conference in Las Vegas in April. And if you have any restaurants that you'd like us to know about,
We will
please
share.
tell us.
Who else has a question? Someone must have a question.
Hi, my name's Diana, and I'm actually looking for my next position. I'm coming out of 20 years in management and strategic consulting with, anything from project management to visioning, to strategy, all of that. And I'm interested in getting into hospitality and food and beverage. What would you suggest I look at as I'm making that fairly big career pivot?
This is a really good question. It's a massive space, when I think about from like supply chain to product on a plate to product, sold to CPG packaging. Then there's like the service aspect of it. What were you consulting on? Tell me about that.
So I've been working in corporate consulting for a large professional services network at the global scale. And so it was working on the operations of the corporation itself, so within house. And so, working on how to make things more efficient and transform at the IT level. And so I'm trying to take those skills and transfer them into this space.
So a lot of the very large hotel brands have an insights team, and we have a lot of strategic team members, and that would be a very swift way into the heart of hospitality because strategic planning for, hotel growth and ultimately brand growth is what this sort of team tends to do. So strategy and insights is a great way to think about your global brands. If you're looking for something a bit smaller, then I think you're living more in the sort of strategic financial sector, like how to grow. So you're living in development, and that's actually really fun. But strategic growth over a period of time, you kind of need to be in some of the larger orgs. But
Thank you.
come over. I mean, it's fun.
We
Appreciate it.
depend so deeply on the insights team because we're so big that it's hard to, how do I put this? It's hard to measure when by the time you evaluate every single hotel, you're like, okay, and that was 6 months ago, and now things are changing in real time. So I think in the world of change, like constant change for hospitality, constant change for business, constant evolution in the future with integrations of things like technology, AI, like the globalization. We depend so much on our strategists that keep us honest with what a lot of our decision making is. Like, we are a subject matter expert. We collectively have over 100 years of food and beverage experience, and that's what's driving how we speak about things or how we guide our program or guide the development of our hotels. But we need to validate that, and having professionals on our side to do that is pretty critical.
It's great to hear such an ecosystem. Thank you for sharing those insights.
For sure. Best of luck to you, Diana.
I have
Marie,
a question.
yay.
Marie Charlotte has a question.
So I have a question for you about branding and the power of brand. And
Yes.
in each of your products, which are a different concept of hotels, right? How powerful is the brand compared to the actual service or product provided, right? You need high quality, but you also need a powerful brand. How do you view the power of that brand, and what do you do to uphold that brand to what it really is? Like, what is your strategy? Do you have a one branding brain of Hilton that's going to look at all of them, or is each of them its own entity?
This is such a powerful question. I like actually physically moved to the edge of my seat because it's something I didn't touch upon. And brand is probably one of the most important things you can do. And even in building my CV, I wanted to be part of strong brands because brand speaks to other brand. And in Hilton, the hotel space is built on, if you think about like 24 brands across Hilton and the power of them, you have sort of more select service, you have this lifestyle space, full service, you have the lifestyle space, and then you have luxury. And each of the brand requires different things, two components to that. How much does it cost to build? And then ultimately, what am I getting for it? What are the guests getting for it? And the visual brand identity is equally as critical as the brand delivery. Because if you don't signify and signal what the brand is, it winds up falling flat. One of the reasons why we're here, actually, to kind of reposition and revalue a lot of the brands that have currently been engineered. I think that when you get to large organizations like this, sometimes we forget that the heart of brand, once you get the brand visual identity and once you know what you stand for, I think what we forget is ultimately how brand creates an emotional value to the consumer. And without the emotional value, we ultimately live in a space that where we are a little, we unfortunately lose our net promoter score, right? Like our NPS, our brand loyalty. So the power of brand is almost more critical than what you're putting on the proverbial plate. It is almost more important. And the reason I believe this exists is today in a place where we are all digital, right? Like I'd love to be hosting this in a room with you in person, right? And I think it would be very, very genuine. So hopefully I don't fall flat on video, but in a time where we are digitized, we people are searching, they're deeply searching for what tribe they belong in and what tribe they belong to. And brand identifies that. So visual brand, is it healthy? Is it not? Is healthy indulgent? Is indulgent Snickers bar, or is it like the new health bar that exists today with fewer calories and no sugar? You know, when you think about what lifestyle you're assigning yourself toward, you're signing up for brands, you're signing up for lifestyle when you assign to a brand. So I think we can think that something looks good, but it's really what it's communicating to a consumer. And in Hilton, we have brand leaders that guard the brand. They don't define it, they guard it. So typically you want a creator creating the brand value and the brand proposition and the brand positioning within the market space. So what is the demographic I'm going after? And what are the three or four principles that create that brand story? Then you have people that guard that with their lives. And those brand leaders come in and they say, no, 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 you cannot put a hotel here because that's against our brand value. That's against our brand position. I'm not going to get the people who love the virtue signals that I have for this brand without it. And from there, man, you have to deliver, right? Like in the delivery of what is the product matters at the end. And in some cases, it can be, you know, sometimes less important when you have the halo effect of brand. If you think about a strong brand online right now, like retail, let's talk about Goop, right? Like Goop is a strong brand for a certain type of consumer. And I trust everything Goop says. It's like really weird, right? Like I trust every soap they put on their website. I don't know why, but it's because I'm somehow assigning myself to the value set that many of the people who shop there do. And I think that that is unfortunately it is something quite important to building anything these days. Thank you for the question. Hopefully I answered it comprehensively. I think it's more valuable than most things.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. It's fascinating.
Thank you, Michelle. And I know we are coming up on time, so I just wanted to thank Michelle one more time for taking her midday to join us. We have officially convinced her to join the group. So hopefully Michelle will be a member in our next round of inductions. But Sheila, I also wanted to thank you and the rest of the mentorship committee for allowing me to propose this time. And with that, I'll give the floor back to you. I know there's a couple updates related to other live digital events. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Michelle, and thank you, Catherine. It's been an enlightening conversation today. We do so appreciate you.
I had so much fun. I mean, like really a lot of fun. And I wish it were a two-way conversation, so it wasn't like me talking at you. I hope you didn't feel that in any way. But feel free to find me on LinkedIn, or let's connect, because I'm, strong female leaders in the world. Happy to know.
Before we wrap up, here's a quick preview of some exciting live online events coming your way. On September 9th, from noon till 1 p.m. Eastern Time, we'll explore how to build strong, effective relationships between public relations professionals and members of the media. On September 16 from 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern Time, save the date for a lively panel discussion on how restaurants and food service providers can better meet the needs of their vegan customers. Watch for the event announcement soon. On October 7, noon to 1 p.m. Eastern Time, mark your calendar for an update to the 2024 Table Talk on GLP-1 medicines and their impacts from individual to society, featuring a distinguished panel of presenters. Thank you for joining us today. Please help spread the word about Live Online in your chapter and with your friends and colleagues. It's a complimentary benefit for members and only $10 per event for non-members. That's all for now. I'm your host, Sheila Cry. See you in September, and bye for now.
All right. Thank you, Sheila. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, ladies. It was fantastic.
Our pleasure.
Thank you.